angels waging war in the unseen realm. Global events fulfilling biblical prophecy. Eternal life. What lies beyond mortality? From analyzing the paranormal from a biblical worldview to the discussion of cutting-edge science and technology. Conspiracy, discovery, special investigative reports. Unafraid to explore the challenging issues facing humanity. Welcome to another edition of Skywatch TV. Special Investigative Report.
News from Skywatch TV. Welcome, I'm Derek Gilbert in Studio A alongside Tom Horn and my best friend in the world, Sharon Gilbert. Some things to tell you about Skywatch TV, and rather than write it out in long form, we decided to sit down and turn on the cameras. Thank you, Joe, and just talk about these a little bit. Tom, you've put out an open letter to the people who have expressed an interest in Skywatch TV earlier this week, and basically we'll kind of be working from that just a little bit, maybe elaborating a little bit on some of the points in that letter. First of all, and I guess this is really big news, and especially in how quickly this all came about, Skywatch TV is now a 501c3 nonprofit organization.
Yeah, and you know, of course, this was the first time I ever had to go through the process. You have to, in the application, it's quite lengthy. You have to write bylaws. We had to form a board. I mean, it was a great deal to actually forming a legitimate 501c3. But I had been told even then that even though we'd crossed all the T's and dotted all of our I's, that, you know, it could take a year, it might take longer than a year for us to get our official letter back from the IRS. But from the time that we sent in the application until we got the letter back, it was only 8 weeks. So if you allow some time for processing and it's in the mail and it gets to somebody's office and it probably sat there a little while, I mean, this thing was stamped so fast that you just have to imagine that somehow God was part of it.
He's got this giant red button up there saying, go.
Easy, yes.
Yeah.
Easy button.
Well, especially in the news items that have come out over the past couple of years about how conservative organizations, and maybe, you know, focusing more on politically conservative, but certainly, you know, a conservative view of outlook, worldview, let's say, you know, the applications from organizations that tend to be a little more conservative seem to have been slower to process in recent years. So this really is a remarkable thing.
It was remarkable. I think one of the things that helped us is the whole emphasis around Skywatch TV is not to be political. We're not going to use Skywatch Television to try to promote a particular candidate to an office, and that's where some of these type organizations can get into trouble. Why would we not do that? Well, why step down from a higher calling? Preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ is the dunamis, the Apostle Paul says in the New Testament. If you want to change culture, if you want to change lives, the power is in the preaching of the gospel.
Yeah.
Amen.
And that's what we want to do. Of course, you know, get me going here, and all of a sudden we'll have a little revival going on.
Amen.
Well, hey, go.
That would be
You
okay
go.
too,
Yeah.
right?
Of course, we're limited to 33
We
minutes.
are. Yeah, okay. But yeah, I mean, it was that, and of course, you know, a few emails from people wanting to know whether we were a 501c. Because some people, when they make, you know, donations, they need their tax receipts at the end of the year. That helps them somewhat. And I've known plenty of people in ministry who they want to get a tax receipt from the federal government for that donation because it gives them more retainable discretionary revenue that they turn right around and put into other ministries. So there was that part of it. And then the other part of it is you cannot get on some Christian television unless you have that letter from the IRS showing that you're a 501c because they're a nonprofit. And so they can't put a for-profit organization in a nonprofit like the church channel. If you pay to go on the church channel, and it's, you know, it's however many it is, a few hundred affiliate stations across the United States, if you don't have that letter from the IRS, you can't even get on the nonprofit station. So there's reasons we had to do it, but of course the benefit would also be to people who make donations to Skywatch Television for the ministry.
How many channels are you on right now?
Well, right now, I don't know how many we're on because we're on direct television, and direct television is on stations all across the United States. But we're on, I would say we're on 3. We're on direct television, we're on the Dish Network, and we're on Glory Star. Now, what's coming soon, and I actually think that this is more the future. Not to say anything negative about direct television, but people want on-demand television, and I'm more excited even about our Roku channel, which we can talk about, I guess, in a moment. Derek spent a lot of time.
He worked night after night on that. I can tell you that. I can watch him.
It was way more complicated than what we thought it was going to be.
Well, it's not a plug and play, but it is a. You're right. On demand is a big thing, and of course we've already got the YouTube channel that people can subscribe to, so it's there. But there's something about seeing it on the big screen. And being able to bring it up there in a hurry. And Roku has become the leader in the set-top box. There are others out there, but Netflix did a smart thing in developing the Roku box, and we will have a channel there shortly. It should be, we're hoping, based on the timeline they gave us, by the 15th of April. That it will be approved, and people can then, we'll of course put a link on the website at skywatchtv.com to show you where to go if you have a Roku account to add it to your Roku box, so that you can show, it'll show up there alongside all the network channels. You'll have a Skywatch TV button there. There'll be inside their categories for the weekly program, the flagship program, also the daily updates, which will begin shortly, and some short-form interviews that we'll conduct when we have guests in town. For example, Chris Putnam's been in town this week, and we got a short discussion with him. And there will also be audio only. For people who may be, say, busy but want to hear the program, you can also choose an audio-only option, which also leads
And
me
there may be some exclusive content on that.
Yes, right. Things that will do audio only as guests come in, maybe not dressed appropriately to put on TV or not wanting to go on TV, but we can sit down and we can produce the audio a lot faster than the video, which also leads me to point out that we've also got a podcast available, which is if you go to skywatchtv.com, look in the top menu bar there and click on podcast, and you can download an audio version. We had some folks interested in that. If you've got a slow internet connection, or you're trying to catch up on content with your cell phone and you don't want to use all the bandwidth for a large video file, you can download these audio files much quicker, use up much less bandwidth, and hopefully it'll get into areas where people are maybe don't have cable, don't have satellite, or just have a slow internet connection.
You talked about the daily updates. Now, you've been doing that sort of weekly since early this year. Is that what's in the sidebar at the website?
Yeah, that'll show up in the sidebar at the website, and there'll also be an archive of those. Those will also be on the Roku channel and the YouTube channel.
But you're going to daily.
Going to go to a daily production schedule, which means having to really get after it.
Now, is that mainly news?
Well, yeah, looking at issues in the news, there will be some geopolitical discussion there, because when you talk about the Middle East, especially the geopolitical things happening there, there's always prophetic importance. Right. But some of the things that we see in the news today, and again, not trying to make it partisan, but for example, the reaction to the recent passage of the Religious Freedom Law, Restoration Act in Indiana and Arkansas. What does that mean significantly for us as Christians trying to discern the times and the seasons? We'll look at, and this will be your forte, looking at cutting-edge scientific research and developments.
Science stuff.
Yes.
Sciencey stuff. Yeah, we'll take a look at pandemics that are forming in other parts of the world, whether or not they're, I should say, epidemics, and whether or not they will become pandemics. And we'll talk about the Skywatch Women's Show in a minute, because I'm going to get to that. But also, I'll be talking about anything, technology, science, anything that is new to pharmakia, which is a word, that Greek word that we, I think most Bible scholars know of, and it's one of the things we're told to avoid. And in fact, I saw today a story about a man in Florida, apparently a new street drug, sometimes called gravel, sometimes called flakka, I believe. And it's a it's a derivative of other drugs that are out there. It's one of the ingredients in bath salts, in fact, the street drug. It's only $5 a pop. Wow. So it's really cheap, and it literally causes users to believe they are being pursued, and their temperature, their core temperature, elevates to over 103 degrees, sometimes as high as 104, 105. So they strip off their clothes, and they're often found running naked because they really believe they're being pursued by animals, demons, other humans.
This sounds a lot like what the media was referring to as the zombie apocalypse a couple summers ago.
Yes, but it's worse. And it's becoming a real problem in Florida.
Yeah. Well, these are the kind of things that we'll be keeping an eye on, because the mainstream media will report on these stories, but they'll filter them through a secular lens.
Right.
Yeah. So that is something. Now let's talk about the all-women's program. That's a really exciting development.
I'm so excited about that because, one of the things that I, as a woman, have observed for decades is that if you watch Christian television, generally you don't have an all-women's show. You'll have women on the set. You'll have women discussing various aspects with men, but to have just a women's panel, sort of like, I could say it's sort of like some secular shows you may be watching. I won't name any of them, but I think we're going to get into topics that begin at Bible prophecy and go to anything that concerns a woman. And that includes childbearing, it includes our self-esteem issues, which it's a big issue today. It will talk about how to raise teenage daughters, women who are raising kids alone. And that's a lot of women. Women who have never been married. We'll get into issues like that. How do you serve God as a female if you can't be fulfilled, as a wife and mother? So we'll get into all that, and we will occasionally have other guests joining us on the panel. I think we're going to have about 4 ladies. And in fact, if you've watched the interview that you did with Allie Anderson, and Carl Olofsson, 2 of the investigators on the Skywatch investigative
Well, actually,
team.
those won't even play it. This will play before that. But
See, now you've got that
See,
to
you
look
see that
forward
too,
to. Allie Anderson is, I believe, going to be one of the Skywatch women, and also your lovely wife, Nita Horn, and also I think Donna Howell may be on there. She's one of the authors that Defender represents, and we'll see if we can't get a few more in there. And occasionally, if you have someone that you believe is a wonderful Christian woman author, and you'd love to see her on the Woman's Show, Skywatch Women, please send me a note. And my address we'll put on the bottom of the screen so you can email to me.
And of course, now you're talking about having a set with multiple panelists. And as you can see here, we've already got 3 of us here.
And me turning and
Yeah, so somewhat
and that's another
improvised.
part of the future, the near future.
We've only just launched the channel, and Tom has already got a plan to blow up the studio and start.
But the thing is, we always did have a plan from the very beginning that we would have more of a news desk. We wanted as many as 5 or 6 panelists when we're doing these programs. We want them to be far more dynamic. But, I only had so much money. When I came to Missouri with my plan to retire, which talk about God blowing something up, right? And I had to figure out between buying land, buying buildings, all of the enterprises that we're doing, you can get a lot of money tied up in inventory as a publishing house. When I started talking to the professional builders that build studios, so you can get into hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars, and very quickly. So I had to give them a budget so we could start, so we could get on television, which is the studio that we're using now. The studio that's going to be for the women, it's only got some of the lights. We've still got to get all of the cameras. We've got to get the set pieces. But we intend on taking this studio apart, and very soon. People are going to see the program that's playing on direct television, and it's also playing on Skywatch TV and will be on Roku starting very soon. They're going to see probably 12 to 13 shows, which we're canning right now, so that we then can take the studio apart. And then in 12 or 13 weeks from now, all of a sudden they're going to see a much bigger, it's going to have a lot more light in it, it's going to have a news desk. And we're just believing by God that we're going to be able to do this. So we're going to take whatever resources I've got left and shake them out of the piggy bank.
Get him to press that button again.
Get him to press the button again.
Or ask him to.
And we've already got people who are making donations. I mean, that community out there of people is growing that believe in what we're doing, and they want us to stand in the gap in this generation. Some of the shows we were shooting earlier today, and then Chris Putnam and I did a Skype radio program. And one of the questions came up, well, why would you even be talking about things like the path of the immortals and some of the stuff that's in there, CERN and wormholes, and why? Because the world is asking questions.
Exactly.
Yes.
And what we don't want is for today's generation to wind up in dark corners of the internet where they get in there in occultic sites, and those people are giving them answers, but they're also leading them in the wrong way. We want to stand up and say, we will talk about portals. We will talk about UFOs. We will talk about Morgellons disease. We
Yes.
will talk about
Which has been in the news, yeah.
Ebola. We will talk about these issues, and we will put them in context. In fact, some of the daily updates that are probably coming right after this, here in the next few days, Derek will be analyzing the Middle East, probably talking about ISIS. But how many people know that right where ISIS is operating is the Euphrates River, which the Bible says is going to open up and angels are going to come out of it. So.
Right.
Well, that's what we do. We analyze the news, but we put it into a much bigger scope, right? We also want to know what God has to say.
Well, I know someone out there is probably sitting there thinking, I'd love to help. Is there a donation page at Skywatch TV?
Yeah, there is. If they go to the front page, there's a button at the top in the navigation area that says donate. Right now, we are sending the New Testament audio Bible.
Oh.
And it's the King James Version audio Bible. So people that want to be able to drive, and listen to those discs playing, it's like a 15-disc set.
Is that the one with the English guy?
Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful. I mean, it's a wonderful set. There's nothing
Alexander
cheap
Scorby.
about it.
Yeah.
It's not Alexander
Oh.
Scorby, but it's another guy that has a rich English
One of those
accent.
wonderful
Yeah.
Shakespearean
Right.
accents.
And any donation right now that people send to Skywatch TV, we're sending them that audio Bible as our gift. But we will be probably every month pretty soon. We're going to be offering something different because a lot of people are supporting Skywatch TV monthly with a donation, and we don't want to keep sending them the same audio Bible over and over. So we'll start changing that month by month and doing some special things like that.
Yeah, cool.
Well, you mentioned earlier Chris Putnam and the forthcoming book that you've been working on the Path of the Immortals. 2 years of research involved in that, and also the special investigative DVD, a set that's going to compile the interviews conducted for that. And this is just the first of a number of investigations, special reports that Skywatch TV will put together.
Yeah, it's the programming. It's also field reports. It's exclusive video. When Chris was in Sedona, he goes to an area where reportedly there is a portal. There's an area there where the veil between this world and the other is thinner, right? And people report seeing all kinds of anomalous activity.
Well, didn't he see something
Well,
too?
that's what I'm saying. We sent Chris there with a film crew, and in order not to have somebody think that maybe, or have us think that maybe something we picked up was a lens flare or dust that got stuck on a camera lens or what. So we set everything up, professional cameramen, professional camera equipment, and set them up from 2 different angles. And Chris, they literally had, I would call it a light being. I don't know what these are, but this huge orb flies up out through this, I don't know where it comes from, a mystical doorway or something. It flies up, it gets above their head, it's shooting all over the place. It's making like evasive maneuvers, right? But they happen to have the camera lens back far enough that they're capturing this activity from 2 different angles. And then it literally goes, and it's just gone.
This was not any kind of a camera failure.
No,
it wasn't dust.
No, now what it was, I'm not sure. But then right after that, a gigantic V-shaped craft, silently, so quiet that they didn't even realize it was there. They were snapping all the shots, and when they come back, they saw that they had it on film. Reminded very much of the Phoenix Lights. So there was activity going on there, but they'll see not just the Skywatch TV special investigative reports, but when we do those, which will go anywhere from 4 weeks to 6 weeks of programming, it'll basically be 3 to 4 times a year when we interrupt. We interrupt the following program to bring you this special investigative report. And this will be where we've sent field investigators and film crews. They may even go to other countries. We already have a lot of ideas right now that are percolating. We would like the public to know that they also can make recommendations. So they could email recommendations.
They could also tell us on our Facebook page.
Right.
Facebook.com/Skywatch TV.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm very excited about that. I think that's the thing that's going to make Skywatch TV different, kind of a new paradigm in Christian broadcasting. It's going to be it's kind of a mix. It's a Christian version of 2020 of unsolved mysteries. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also just standard prophetic television. So I couldn't be more excited. A very big piece of that puzzle was the two of you coming here, Derek and Sharon Gilbert. I've known for years, your willingness to do some important things, to think outside the box and yet to maintain biblical orthodoxy. Because some people, they think outside the box, and pretty soon they're so far outside the box theologically, you can't reel them back in, right?
Yeah, it's like the old saying, my mind is so open that my brain fell out. Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
And you guys were the pioneers of internet broadcasting and a lot of other
Grandma
things.
and Grandpa, yeah. But when you invited us to come out here, I think what really clinched it for us, because we've known you for 10 years plus, and we've known you in all sorts of circumstances, and you have always been faithful and true. But when you told us your ultimate vision, and you've laid it out at the website in your letter, but tell us about Whispering Ponies Ranch.
Yeah. Well, this is where I wish Nita was here too. But yeah, Whispering Ponies Ranch, the idea is to create a retreat facility. We've already bought the land. We already have 150 acres. And it's in a location where it's not surrounded by housing, so it's very private. It's got big ponds on it that have fish in it. There's going to be prayer trails. We've already cut a bunch of the prayer trails in. There also will be therapy animals that will be used there. One of the things that I did, one of the last things actually that I did for the Assemblies of God in the Oregon District, was I was the executive director on a board called Camp and Conference Ministries. And they had a camp, a beautiful wilderness location in between two crater lakes. But it had fallen into disrepair. It had 20 years of deferred maintenance. And they were at a point where they would either have to just shut it down and sell the land or fix it. And so I took a position on the board to oversee rebuilding it, remarketing it, and there were great things that happened there. But one of the things, after we got up and we were operational, in fact, you couldn't get a week in Camp Davidson by the time we were done. We had every kind of denomination, but then we also had Boys and Girl Scouts. We had, Future Farmers of America. We just had everybody was using this facility.
And you were certified to be what kind of camp is it that you went through the certification
Well, we were American Camping Association certification, which is like the highest level certification you can get. And it means everything from the fact that you have programs in place if a stranger winds up on the property. You know what you're supposed to do. If a forest fire breaks out, you have policy that tells you how to get out of there. In fact, we did have a forest fire, and within 30 minutes, we had actually packed up, bussed out, and moved to Sisters, which was about 30 minutes away. 300 or so people off of that campground because we had policy in place. So that's American Camping Association.
So you know what you're doing.
We know what we're doing.
Yeah.
But here's the part that meant more to me than anything else. I was writing grant applications. I was getting giant trusts to give us money because they really bought into what we were doing. The Murdoch Foundation, the Ford Family Foundation, the Dan Wyden people that had the Nike advertising accounts. And they had really bought into what we were doing. But there was a series of camps that we ran there that were called Royal Family Kids Camps. Now, these are kids that wind up displaced either because they've been abused or maybe something happened to their parents and they don't have parents anymore. But somehow they wind up being wards of the state. And usually these are kids that have been psychologically or emotionally damaged. And they've lost their trust. And that's the problem, is they're shut down. A lot of them, they will not talk to people. So what you do is they would come into the facility, and for every child is a trustee, one trustee per child.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And our staff was not supposed to interact with the kids, try to talk to them or nothing. All we did was accommodate the program. So we had high ropes course, low ropes courses, zip lines program, all this stuff. But one of the things we found were animals. It's amazing, how God can use a little puppy or how God can use a miniature pony to touch a child. And you know why? Because instinctively the child knows that little puppy, that little pony doesn't have an agenda.
Right.
It's not going to hurt. It's not waiting for them to turn their back and then it's going to rape them or beat them or hurt them. They know that instinctively. And the way that God and their trustees can use that program to bring them back out of their shell and start integrating them again so that they learn trust. And they learn it sometimes through the animals, but then with the people that are around them, and eventually they become whole again. And that healing process, when I was there, of all the stuff that we did, and we'd have giant conference, speakers come in, world-renowned people. I didn't care about that. The Royal Family Kids Camps, to me, that was ministry. If you read the New Testament, what does it say? Pure religion and undefiled is visiting the orphans and the widows. Pure religion, right? What I want to do is build the Whispering Ponies Ranch. I want to make it available. And here's the other thing, no cost. So I want to make Defender Publishing as profitable as it can be. I want to make Skywatch Television, as broad as it can be, for the purposes of essentially scraping out of them any revenue that we can produce that would underwrite all of the expenses for groups to be able to come to the Whispering Ponies Ranch. And we're talking full service, food services, accommodations, courses, certified trained personnel that have criminal background checks, manicured landscapes on the properties. We want to provide a world-class facility where people can come, and it doesn't all have to be Royal Families Kids Camp. I mean, it could be a women's group, it could be a writers' conference.
Yeah.
Right. But at the heart of it is these ministries that take people that have been hurt or displaced or damaged. The other part of this plan ultimately is if we can raise additional revenue, we're building, we've already built the training facility. And we intend to use it for certifying dogs and things like that for the veterans that need companion animals. And that's all a part of the program. So I can't go into every detail blow by blow, but the vision behind everything we're doing, the heart of it for me is I want to retire and I want to work for Whispering Ponies Ranch. Right?
Oh, how cool.
Well, and that's one of the things, as Sharon said, that really cinched it for us when we were shown your vision by your son, who took us around on a ATV and said, here are the trails that are being cut. That's where the zip line is going to go. And we began to see what was going on. And we've seen the ponies and Nita's work with the ponies. And to us, it was like, well, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And so, there have been some who've said, boy, you just really stepped out in a leap of faith here. You had a good job working for a good company that pays well, great benefits. They got a retirement plan, and you're leaving that to go. It doesn't feel like a leap of faith at all.
No.
It feels like this is what we were supposed to do all along.
Yeah, I believe that entirely. I believed it before you came. My biggest thought was, how am I going to finagle getting them here? What kind of a story do I have to weave, right?
It's just been a joy. And the Lord has opened so many doors and made, he's escalated and just, said, get it. He's got that button going.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate your support. Again, check the website, skywatchtv.com, for information on how you can support if you're so led. And of course, we look forward to bringing you more compelling programming, important information, great authors with important books on Defender Publishing, and of course, all of that ultimately leading to the goal, the vision of Whispering Ponies Ranch. For Tom Horn, Sharon Gilbert, I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is Skywatch TV. They stirred up a hornet's nest with Petrus Romanus. The final pope is here. Turned up the heat with the book Exo Vaticana, and now they are on the third of a trilogy. Welcome to Skywatch TV, a daily video update. I'm Derek Gilbert. Our guest is Tom Horn. You and Chris Putnam, your co-author on those books, Petrus Romanus and Exo Vaticana, really stirred some controversy by suggesting that the Vatican knows a little more about, or thinks it knows a little more about what may be coming at Earth from outer space than they are letting on. Your new work, On the Path of the Immortals, still researching it right now. What direction are you going with this third of the trilogy?
Well, we just can't keep ourselves from getting into trouble. So, Petrus Romanus was a groundbreaking work. It was just going to be kind of an analysis of a 900-year-old Catholic prophecy, not advocating that it was a real prophecy or not, but, it was coming to an end. It was historic. We had evidence that there were those among the Catholic hierarchy, among the curia, that put stock in it. Maybe they were electing popes or not electing them based on if they could be seen as a fulfillment of that prophecy. So that's all we were going to do, right? We got involved in that. And but one of the things that we did was we predicted a year in advance that Pope Benedict was going to step down, and he did. And in fact, we even named the month that he was going to step down. It turns out we were accurate. Well, when that happened, then all of a sudden the book went crazy. We were getting phone calls from all over the world, including from Rome. We had some of the Catholic media in Rome wanted us to fly over Rome to do shows, and we were warned not to go. I don't know if that was just, conspiratorial thinking, but we didn't go. But what happened then was we would be doing shows. We did your program. We were doing shows with Steve Quayle. And when they were call-in shows, people were calling in and they were saying, yeah, but what do you make of all this stuff the Vatican's been saying recently about aliens and alien life and some of their theology, and we would baptize aliens and they are our brothers, and people were curious about that. So we decided that we were going to follow up the book Petrus Romanus. We were able to set up a tour. We actually went to Mount Graham in Arizona, went up on the top of the mountain, met with the Vatican representative, the Jesuit that was there that day, climbed all over their advanced telescope, went to the radio telescope. There's actually 3 telescopes on the top of Mount Graham in southeastern Arizona. And then we went to the large binocular telescope, in which sits the notorious Lucifer device, right? And so that seemed to instead of answering the questions we went there to gather, it raised 1,000 more questions, because all the way from people saying, what? The Vatican has an observatory on the top of a mountain in Arizona? What are they doing over there?
Exactly.
All the way from that, all the way to what is the Lucifer device and why are they using it? Which took us back to Malachi Martin, when Art Bell asked him years ago, why is the Vatican heavily invested in the study of deep space on the top of a mountain in Arizona? And he said it's because they know what is approaching the Earth and that it will be of the utmost importance in coming years. Well, anyway, so we wrote a 600-page investigative book called Exo Vaticana that became our best-selling book. But now we're on a third book, and to answer your question, why? Because when we first went to Mount Graham, I had assumed that the reason that the Apache Indian and other indigenous tribes had filed a federal lawsuit actually to try to stop the Vatican and NASA from building that observatory on the top of that mountain, I had assumed it was because it was sacred ground to them, in the sense that their mothers and fathers for hundreds of years had lived on the mountain and died on the mountain, and therefore it's like a graveyard or something. It's holy ground to them. And we found out that that might be the case, but that was not the case. The big issue to them was that Mount Graham is one of 4 of the most holiest mountains to the indigenous people in the United States of America. And as far as the American Indians are concerned, one of 4 of the holiest mountains in the world. Well, then we wanted to know why. Why is it a holy mountain? And to put it in our modern lingo, it's because it is for them what we would call a stargate. A specific geographical location where things can move in and out of our 3-dimensional reality. In fact, we could talk about their creation myth and the role that these mountains played. And that's why they didn't want the Vatican to go up there. So, because we learned that after we wrote the book, Exo Vaticana, it put us right back in a position where, okay, we've got to finish this investigation. And I don't know how much time we've got, but Chris has been investigating hot spots, locations. I'm actually leaving on Monday to go to the Navajo Nation, where we'll be meeting with some of the elders of the tribe there. Maybe we're just digging another giant hole with 1,000 more questions. But we have actually filmed some phenomenal stuff. I mean, his theology actually got upgraded. He never believed in things like orbs. He thought it was all just a big joke.
Tricks of the lens.
Tricks of the lens, until they went there and specifically set up 2 cameras so that you wouldn't get a trick of the lens, and had an orb come down, hover over their head, watch them flit about, and then just literally dissipate, and film from 2 different angles.
Both cameras.
Both cameras. Wow. Followed by an enormous triangular ship that then came through the air very slow, very much like the Phoenix Lights type ship, which they also filmed, and we'll be providing that film on a future program on Skywatch TV.
Okay. Now, the idea of portals, the only example we really see of something like this in the Bible is the account in Genesis where Jacob falls asleep and sees the ladder with the angels climbing up to heaven, climbing down again. What sort of scriptural evidence? I mean, is that it, or is there other? Are there other hints, clues, passages in the Bible that support the idea that there are places on earth that literally serve as gateways between this world and the spiritual realm?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually there are numerous examples. I gave a presentation at Strategic Perspectives not long ago where I mentioned 7 or 8 of these out of the Bible. And, you know, sometimes I might be uncomfortable using the term portal.
Yeah.
But if you specifically are talking about a high or sacred location, then you can see Moses going up one of the mountains, specifically Mount Sinai, where he is to meet with God. When Jesus returns, it says his feet will touch the top of the Mount of Olives, and he will descend. The extra biblical book of Enoch, which of course is still in some versions of the Bible, talks about the watchers who descended onto the top of Mount Hermon. And then from Hermon they come down into the valley of the plain. And interestingly, later on, Nimrod, this big rascal who shakes his fist in the face of God, goes specifically into the plains of Shinar and builds a tower. And what does it say? They intended to build a tower whose top would reach into, and the Hebrew there is Shamayim, the dwelling place of God and or watcher level angels. And God himself says they will accomplish what they have imagined to do. And so he comes down and confuses their language. Now, in our modern lingo, people would say he went there to build a Stargate, a portal, some kind of angelic technology that we can barely comprehend, but something that God said they will accomplish what they have imagined to do. They're going to pierce the veil. So in terms of the American Indians, they have a long history, and they commonly will simply refer to them as sky people, but they're not all good. We, in our language, would talk about this as angels, fallen angels. They also describe coming through those portals these owl-like men that look very much like alien grays, and their shaman call them bad medicine. They're to be avoided.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that, because there's a little type of figurine. It's a class from Mesopotamia, ancient Mesopotamia, that look very much like the character from Close Encounters. No, not Close Encounters. E.T., the Steven Spielberg movie, with the really big eyes. And these little figurines look just like that. They're called eye idols. And it sounds like, if you're talking about a creature with oversized eyes, owl people, that this may have been a global phenomenon.
Well, yeah. In fact, you know, I mentioned on Monday I'm headed for the Navajo Nation. One of the Navajo elders, he's one of 10 in their hierarchy, is a 92-year-old native, but he is a convert to Christianity. And get this, by the way, he was a code talker in World War II. So I'm really looking forward to visiting with him. But he is going to tell us their creation myth in the Navajo language, and then also in the English language, and we'll be providing that on film. We'll probably put it in the Navajo language with the subtitles below it. But in a quick nutshell, their legend says that in the time before time, a giant silvery disc came down over the top of the mountain, and in it sat a bearded man. He was the creator, and he began creating all life on earth. But soon after, another man comes through the portal, but he's not really a man. They said he's a dragon. disguising himself as a man, and he is a deceiver, and he begins deceiving all the peoples of the world. Soon after that, giants start coming through the portal, and they start sweeping across all the Arizona basin, you know.
It's the book of Genesis.
It's the book of Genesis. Well, in fact, they cry out to the great God, and he sends a flood that wipes out all the giants and sweeps their bones under the hills. Of course, then this goes into what? The Smithsonian cover-up, because the Mexican invaders and then the English, and they come here and they start going to all these sacred mounds, digging up these giants and hiding the bones. But yeah, so the title of this third book, because I know that today we're not doing a show on it, we're really just kind of whetting people's appetite to know what Chris Putnam and I are up to. The title of the book is On the Path of the Immortals. Chris is doing some fabulous research, some of the most cutting-edge research right now in quantum physics and theoretical physics. What's happening at CERN? CERN's own physicists are telling us what they're looking for. They're looking for parallel realities, and they want to open a doorway through which they say we may send something or something may come through. Well, that's...
What could possibly go wrong with that?
Yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing the results of this. On the Path of the Immortals, this will result in a book, but also a 4-part investigative series on Skywatch TV.
Yeah, actually, we've already shot a lot of the film, experts from around the world talking about everything from aliens and UFOs, but from a biblical world view. But the film that we shot, we specifically went to see if what we were hearing from some of the Native Americans was true, but we didn't anticipate we were actually going to catch on film stuff that they tell us is coming through these portals, but we did. So there's a documentary film that's coming, but there's going to be a 4-part Skywatch television special investigative report. That's another thing about Skywatch TV. We're going to do this several times per year, where we take a whole month and do a special investigative report, kind of a 2020-like approach, but from a Christian point of view.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing it. On the Path of the Immortals, Tom Horn and Chris Putnam back at work. Keep watching for it here on Skywatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert.